Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Chill Film Discussion, where we discuss films rather in a chill fashion. Um, yeah, just talk about whatever we like and don't like, and how we can, if it can be better, how we can make it better and whatnot. Today we've reviewed or discussed a film called Toast. It is it's British autobiographical um, comedy drama film directed by S.J. Clarkson. It sort of follows Nigel Slater, who is a cookery writer, um, through his adolescence when he was a young boy to a young adult, and it features Freddie Highmore, who plays Nigel Slater as a teenager, Helena Bonham Carter, Ken Scott, Oscar Kennedy, and yeah, I guess for the most part, this film actually just to begin, the intro credits of this film was very well done in my opinion because it was very creative. Like basically, they would put they would depict the credits on like the food labels as the main character's mom, Nigel Slater, and his mom were like going through the store. So that I thought that was very well executed in terms of like intro credits. Very unique way of presenting that. But throughout the film, there's mainly these two acts. Well, the first act is with him and his mom and his dad, during which when the conflict arises when his mom falls ill, and then fortunately his mom passes away, and so he has to he goes through grief and because of his loss of his mother. And then the second act is of uh, Helena Bonham Carter's character, Joan Potter, who at first is cleaner, but then ends up becoming his stepmom, and sort of the conflict that arises between him and his stepmom for, I guess, their approval of his dad in terms of the cooking. So that's the sort of the second act. But the film, at least for me, felt flat because it just felt conflicted because there were times, especially in the first act when he was a little kid, that I felt he was a bit petulant in terms of his behavior toward his the family, and like given the case that his mom was dying or like felt very ill. It was hard to sympathize at times with his reaction, although it's understandable. He is just a kid. So, but it just felt like there was not enough for me to emotionally latch onto in terms of the main character. Like I felt more sympathetic at times with his father, who was more, I guess, aloof in his life than his mom was. And yeah, I guess I just wish there was more of a build up, more of like an emotional connection that was depicted between him and his father. There were times for sure, but I think the movie could have benefited more from this lasting relationship between him and his father, especially after his mother passed. And that sort of that sort of issue that there's no strong emotional connection between him and his father is for sure accentuated in the second act of this film, because when the second act arrives, it's all about him and his Mrs. Potter, or like his stepmom.
Right. That's
Like
conflict, right?
there's not really much interaction between him and his dad anymore, and his dad is basically just like a plot device at this point, and the plot device is just his approval of the food that both of them make. And yeah, the conflict that arises is kind of it just it's silly how it ended, in my opinion. Although I guess it's true to the autobiography of the character,
Right.
or of Nigel Slater. But I honestly thought that like Mrs. Potter or his stepmom was going to become like a mentor toward him, because she knew how to cook very well, and he was trying to learn how to cook, and they were just competing. And I thought that it would have been way more satisfying of an ending if they made amends by like sharing their love of cooking with each other, and
Right.
then I don't know, they could appease the dad with the wonderful foods that they make. But of course, that's not because of the constraint of the autobiography, that wouldn't have happened because in the autobiography they have a lot more tense of a relationship, and then at the end it says that they no longer interacted with each other. That kind of, he just left and didn't see his stepmom ever again. So like, um, yeah, it just I think the character or the actor for Nigel Slater when he was a young adult, when he was older, his performance was a bit one note for me. It just felt like he always had like this smirk behind it. Like there was no like range in his acting that made me like sympathize with his character enough because I felt worse. I felt worse for Mrs. Potter, like his stepmom, at
Yeah.
times, especially near the end when he's about to leave. He's like, "Ah, bye, see ya." Like I don't have nothing to do with you, and she was like holding the tray of like tea and cake, and it's like, Nigel, please eat the she was distraught because his dad had just died, and like he didn't have it didn't there was no emotional like he didn't it didn't seem like he exhibited any emotions toward his father's death,
He didn't
and
mourn or
I
anything,
didn't
or just
mourn.
there
And
wasn't
then
anything
and
like
then he's like, "Yeah, it's time to leave. I'm off. There's nothing here for me anymore." And then like Mrs. Potter's like crying in the kitchen, like she's like broken
that.
down and like doesn't have anything, and or it feels very like like um it just feels very what's the word? I guess like also brat like not brat like selfish and bratty as well in a sense. It's like, oh yeah, like I don't like care about this family anymore. It's like I'm just off. And like the film would have worked if like they depicted Mrs. Potter as like way more like cruel than she was. There was maybe only like one time where she kind of like said these uh was very like
It's threatened him, right? Just like, yeah, I'll make your life miserable.
yeah, basically. But she didn't approach it like that. She approached it in the sense that like, oh hey, like I know I can't replace your mom, but like let's try to make amends. And then when he rejected that, she was like, okay, well I can like then she threatened him.
Right. Right.
And like I don't know, there was just not enough for me to like go against her character that I just felt bad for
Right.
her and
Right.
it made me feel very conflicted. I just still felt conflicted at the end just because of the action. So this film was
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like my sympathy for the characters could have been a lot more um, intended, I guess, if the
Hmm.
emotional buildup with his relationships was executed better.
Right.
Um, but yeah, that's my one. That would probably be my one word for this film. I just feel conflicted. I feel conflicted
Yeah.
watching this
Okay.
film.
No.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's my recap.
So for me, I think I think we kind of reflect the same opinions, Patrick, and yeah, I feel like this movie. The things I liked about this movie, again, as I said before, cinematography, just nothing stellar about it, but I just thought it was pretty know average in terms of like the cinematography. Like it stood out well enough, and I appreciated that, and the acting as well, especially from Mrs. Potter. I think her acting was pretty good, but also from the actor who played the father. Who played the father? What was his name?
He was the guy was played
Ken
by Ken Stott. Yeah,
Yeah, I thought his acting was pretty good.
yeah,
Especially, he had a lot, good range. He's, angry, kind of, almost a borderline abusive father to someone who's like grieving over his wife, right?
yeah.
There's one scene that kind of stood out to me when the father was grieving over the death of the mother, and he kind of, was crying in the corner and then crying in bed, and I think that was the most touching moment in the film. But everything else, I kind of felt like, oh, it was kind of, pretty average.
Hmm.
The big thing after watching this film, I wonder was like, why was this movie made? I don't think there was like a central theme that I kind of took out. It's just depicting this guy's life, Nigel Slater, just like how went through it, and there's some conflict, but everything seemed kind of petty as you said, and everything didn't seem like there's like a main theme of pushing through, overcoming. It's just like this guy, lived through life, and he was conflict with his stepmother, and just showing his day to day, or just like the different points of his life, and nothing, no big theme of overcoming, winning that I could either sympathize with, or that I kind of got away from this film.
Yeah.
That I think was really supposed to teach me anything, or something that I learned, or something that I could think about or chew on. It was just like a movie showing his life, and I don't know, and it just wasn't as exciting. Again, this is a biographical film, but usually with biographical films or whatnot, there's something the main central point, or it shows a point in their life that has a theme that I think you can grab song, you find exciting. That's really interesting experience, but nothing really was like that over here, right? The
Hmm.
main conflict, kind of seems silly. And the main conflict, especially at the end, was between, as you said, between him and Mrs. Potter, and it kind of seems silly. I didn't, get why that was there. She was an adult. She kind of seemed petty, trying to compete for this affection, the affection of the father through cooking, and I didn't get why that was happening. And when I kind of realized, oh, this was actually the main conflict, going back and forth, trying to develop the perfect recipe for the lemon meringue pie, and just like, okay, like what was the point? What happened if you win, right? There's nothing really there, and
Hmm.
it just seemed kind of petty and silly from both sides. You kind of understand why the son is doing it, right? The son wants to make up with his father, be affectionate. Yeah, I can understand that, but I didn't understand why Mrs. Potter was doing it. I think it would have been good to give her character a little bit more color. Um, her see her background, why she's like where she's coming from, her husband, right? That would be nice. Yeah, it kind of shows that yeah, maybe she wants to, she sees her worth in cooking, she sees her worth in cleaning. That's what why she's doing it. But
Hmm.
I kind of want to understand like why why does she think that cooking will grant her this, or why does she think cooking will grant her this affection, right? Like, where does she
Hmm.
come from? Like, more interaction between her and the father in this way. Like, maybe the father appreciated, like, oh, I'll keep you around for this, or maybe
Yeah.
her thinking with her and her husband, right? Seeing that kind of background, just giving her a little bit more color. I think giving her more characterization, a little bit more depth, would have outlined why this conflict was more important to her and why this conflict was coming about. And and then I think that would have been a bit more emotional. I think you're right. Also, what could have improved is the characterization of the father, in terms of like just having him more, I think, um just the bond between him and the son, right? Just showing that and having some warning, I think would give it more emotional impact. um but otherwise, I thought this movie was kind of like, yeah, just I didn't see the point of it, like in terms of why am I watching it, what am I getting out of it, what story is trying to be told here, right? Yeah, it's just to know his life, but like why am I interested in seeing his life? Like there's nothing like too interesting or exciting that was happening. It's just him competition between him and his stepmom, and even then the stakes weren't that really that high. And then his father dies, and yeah, he
Yeah.
runs out, and it just seems kind of petty, and you kind of yeah kind of feel sympathetic just the way that I think Mrs. Potter was like running after him. She was obviously distraught, and
Hmm.
Nigel just kind of seemed like ignoring it, and yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah, I just feel like
This
it didn't land. It just
It
didn't
just
land.
didn't land right.
Yeah.
You're supposed to maybe feel like, yeah, this guy triumphed over her. Like he had
Yeah.
this like winning smirk and smile. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I can finally
I.
be on my own. I'm just like,
Yeah.
but why? Like why are you winning? Like she's obviously distressed, and you were trying to win affection for your father. Like I don't see where you were. Where he was trying to. What was he achieving? Right? Like he never really seemed like burdened. Right? He never really
Hmm.
seemed like he was like crossed out. His father kind of let him do his own thing. Yeah, maybe he quit his job, but he was always like doing cooking classes, trying to perfect the recipe. Right? Like, I don't know. It just didn't seem like he actually won, or I never really felt like he won, or like was like, yeah, he won. Like was rooting for him. I was like, yeah, like okay. Um, and then in this film, he's obviously Nigel Slater depicts his homosexuality, and that's fine, right? But I just thought yeah, near the end they kind of show it, but they tried to bake romance into it, where I feel like they
Yeah.
didn't really have to, right? I
Yeah.
think there's like kiss, right, and just like yeah, like I don't think they needed to show that. I don't think, not that the kiss was bad, just like what was the point? Like there's no, I mean, you could have hinted it, right? Or you
Yeah.
could have then shown like yeah, he was attracted, being turned down, but obviously
Yeah.
this guy like attracted. It's like, oh yeah, this you can have fun. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of like pushed through
Yeah.
without um, um, doing it in a way that just added to the whole his character, who he was,
Yeah.
because it's not something he had to overcome, nothing that he had to accept, nothing that he had to have others accept or try to tolerate or push through. Right? He never had to do anything. It's just it's kind of just there, and I think it could either
Hmm.
not that it had to be the main portion of the story, right? But I think in the end they try to foster this romance when it really didn't. This movie was not about romance at all. I mean, it could have been,
Yeah.
it could have been part of his characterization. Sure, I like the beginning, like how him like being attracted to Josh, him with, interactions with his other classmates. Yeah, that was fine. Just at the end, I think, which is the Melbourne. I just thought like, yeah, they're trying to put this two together. They have this kind of like almost kind of like a final kiss. Like this, it was like they tried to portray as a romantic moment where they're running in the woods. It's like, what the heck is this going on? Like this is not the portion of the movie. I think it'd be more inspiring if it's a more subtle moment between the two. Maybe like him trying to inspire, like, oh yeah, I'm fighting. But even
Yeah.
then, it had to be that is another layer of the whole conflict between him and Mrs. Potter. If that was a little
Yep.
bit more tension, then then the relationship I think between him and the ballerina would have made a little more sense with where the ballerina was probably inspiring him to overcome or fight with the mother, the
Yeah.
stepmother
Yeah.
of it, right? So that could have
Sure.
been I think baked in a little bit better.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree. I agree.
but yeah, overall I just thought the film, you know, the storyline wasn't there. Like the plot is simple enough, just story of life. I didn't really get much out of it. Just like yeah, point A to point B of his life, the biography.
Hmm.
Nothing really exciting coming out of it.
All right. Vote of truth. How would you rate it?
How would I rate it? Do I go
Yeah.
first? Or you want to go first?
You go first.
I go first.
Or do you want me to go
Um,
first? I can go first if you want me to go first.
yeah, you go first this time.
All right. All right. All right. Okay. 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 All right. Sounds good. Yep. I give this movie a 4.
Oh,
Yeah. I thought it was well below average. Well, yeah, I thought it was below average. I like I said, I to me the most I got from this film was the interesting intro credits that they depicted. Like I thought that was really cool, and then from there, it could have been. The first act was there. There are parts where I was like, okay, yeah, it's very heartfelt. I do like this dynamic between the emotional dynamic between him and his mom. That was well done. It was very heartfelt. It's just when it hits the second act, when Mrs. Potter gets introduced and they move to the new house, that whole half just, it
yeah,
felt so, like the execution, or just how it was framed, and like how the time was spent in the film, where the energy was spent between this like conflict between the two. Which I mean, I guess it makes sense given the autobiography, but like how the characters themselves were depicted, it just did not make me really root for Nigel at the
right.
end. It didn't make me
Yeah,
feel particularly interested or sympathetic toward his cause.
yeah,
Even though like he himself may feel like he needs to move out, like he's being burdened by Mrs. Potter, or that's where the main conflict arises. But I just wish that there would have been more. There would have been more in terms of understanding Mrs. Potter, understanding his dad, building that relationship between the two. Um, I still think that I thought the film was geared toward. I thought I was going toward like she was going to mentor him,
but
and that didn't end up happening.
hmm,
So it was just very disappointing, I guess, to see how it ended and see how it unfolded in the second act, and that's where it really fell for me.
yeah,
I just didn't think that this film was particularly that great. Um,
right,
like it wasn't terrible, but there were
right,
definitely things that could have been way better. And so, would I recommend it? Probably not.
yeah,
Like the only thing I would recommend maybe is watching that first intro scene to get the credits. Be like, oh, okay, that's cool. But
creative, yeah,
other than that, or maybe like the first half of the movie, but
right,
the
right,
second half is just not. There's other movies that I think there's other like food movies that are way better. There's other maybe like
yeah,
more like I don't know family conflicting movies that are better. Um, I don't know. It's just yeah, they're just other better. In my opinion, there's better movies that I
yeah.
can watch.
That's true.
Fortunately, it was only an hour and a half, so it wasn't like terribly long. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
that's my
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I think I'd give it the same, a 4.
oh my gosh, who would have known?
Yeah, you kind of said the same thing. It's below average. I feel like there's no point in the movie, right? But the movie never made me cringe, right? I never thought like yeah, this is like like I was like what's the?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, I was like bored, but there's a storyline. I could sit through it. I could watch it, right?
yeah,
It
yeah,
just felt like there was like nothing that came out of it. Nothing that thought it was like too riveting. So, below average movie, and would I recommend it? I don't think I will, just because it just seemed like like a subpar movie that
Yeah,
I don't think people would appreciate and just like we get a lot out of it. So
fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I agree. All right, well, what a nice on that high note, I suppose. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, to this episode of the Chill Film Discussion.
yep.
Yep. Peace.
Bye.